Hello, everyone. Another story today at Cindy Harper Speaks, and we're going to read about a person in history. This is a true story. And the story is called Deborah Sampson, Soldier of the Revolution. It's by Lee S. Justice, and it's illustrated by Ron Himler. So the strategy focus is freedom for everyone. Let's find out. Deborah Sampson. Deborah Sampson was born in Plimpton, Massachusetts in 1760. Throughout her childhood, she heard about Boston's patriots, also called the Sons of Liberty. She heard the talk of independence, of breaking free of Britain. Freedom was a dangerous and exciting idea, but there was little freedom in Deborah's own life. As she later said, "I was born to be unfortunate." When she was very young, Deborah's father sailed off on a ship and never came back. Her mother did not have enough money for food, so she decided to look for a family to take her daughter. Often poor parents bound out a child to another family. In return for a home, food, and clothing, the child would serve the family until age 18. 10-year-old Deborah became a bound servant in the home of the Thomas family of Middleborough. The Thomases treated Deborah like a daughter. Of course, sons and daughters were expected to work. Mrs. Thomas told Deborah what she should do each day. First, Deborah had to get up at dawn to begin her household chores. Then she must help make breakfast for the family. Next, she should feed the chickens and milk the cow. Then she should water the vegetable garden. After that, she could sew, spin, or weave. Like all farm women, Deborah worked hard. With the 10 Thomas sons, Deborah also hunted and fished. She chopped wood and gathered hay. She did all kinds of heavy work. She was 10, granted, everyone. So a lot of you, when you have household chores to do, think about Deborah Sampson. Farmer Thomas didn't believe in schooling for girls, but Deborah had always been eager to learn. She already knew how to read and write. Deborah read every newspaper she could find. A minister gave her a religious book. She soon knew it by heart. She kept a journal. In it, she listed her good actions and her bad ones. She wanted to improve herself. "I wish you wouldn't spend so much time scribbling," Farmer Thomas complained, but he did not make her stop. So Deborah continued. At church one day, someone read an important document to the crowd. The document said, "All men are created equal." It said that people had rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It listed the reasons for breaking free of Britain. At the end of the reading, the listeners leaped up and cheered. The Declaration of Independence made Deborah's heart pound, but she wondered what some of it meant. She wondered about words like liberty. The soldiers were fighting for liberty. The older Thomas boys had already left home and signed up. Was liberty only for a nation, or could there be liberty for a 16-year-old farm girl? So now Deborah's 16. When she turned 18, Deborah began working in people's homes as a weaver. She also taught children for 2 summers, but by the time she was 21, she was eager for a change. Deborah had an active mind. She was quiet, but in a strong, confident way. Deborah looked strong too, and she had grown taller than other women of the time. In fact, she was taller than many men. But while men her age had a chance to see the world and taste freedom, women didn't. Deborah decided she wanted adventure too. One day, Deborah's Middleborough neighbor saw her going about her business as usual. The next morning, she was gone. Days later, a young man in farmer's clothes stood before an army recruiter in Bellingham, Massachusetts. "Your age?" asked the recruiter. 18, said the young man. His face did not even have a whisker. He looked 15, even younger, but the army needed soldiers Young or old, the recruiter did not care. The young farmer promised to serve for a term of 3 years. He signed his name Robert Shirtleaf. Robert Shirtleaf was not a teenage boy. He was Deborah Sampson in disguise. It was 1782. 50 new recruits hiked west through the Berkshire Hills. Hour after hour, they kept moving without a rest. Deborah, marching among the men, suddenly realized what she had done. She felt terror. If the army found out she was a woman, she surely would be punished. She might be hanged. Deborah calmed herself. In the days and months ahead, she would have to be watchful. She would play the part of a quiet young man who kept to himself. After 10 tiring days, the recruits reached West Point in New York. There, they received uniforms and weapons. Deborah began training as a foot soldier in the 4th Massachusetts Regiment. The war was winding down, but British troops and Tory bands were still active in New York. Deborah joined scouting parties hunting for armed Tories. She faced musket fire. She heard the cries of the wounded. She saw men fall beside her. Luckily, she escaped unharmed. Then came a morning when Deborah was not so lucky. In a battle with Tories, she was wounded in the head and leg. She begged her comrades not to take her to the hospital. "Let me die here," she pleaded, but they did not listen. A French doctor at a field hospital treated Deborah's head. She said she had no other wound. The doctor noticed the bloody boot. "Sit you down, my lad," said the doctor, preparing to look at the leg. But Deborah said there was no need. She secretly tried to remove the musket ball from her own thigh with no success. The wound would heal, but not fully. In 1783, Deborah was among the troops in Philadelphia. Sickness spread throughout the city. She became ill. She was brought to a hospital. Her fever was so high that she passed out. When a doctor looked her over, he discovered that the soldier called Robert Shirtley was really a girl. Soon afterward, Deborah Sampson received an honorable discharge from the Continental Army. She returned to Massachusetts. Deborah Sampson married a farmer named Benjamin Gannett. The couple had 3 children. They struggled to make a living on their farm. Years later, Deborah Gannett met a newspaper publisher. He wrote a book based on her life. The Gannetts worked hard, but they still owed money. In 1802, the newspaper publisher came to Deborah with another idea. How would she like to make money by telling her story to audiences? In 1802, women did not go on speaking tours. It just was not done. Deborah Sampson Gannett, 42 years old, thought about the newspaperman's offer. She would have to travel from city to city on her own. She would have to perform before strangers. She would have to memorize a 15-page speech. Deborah said yes, she would do it. Audiences paid to see the unusual soldier. In uniform, Deborah Sampson Gannett performed the drills she had learned as Private Shirtleaf. She gave her speech in a confident voice. Pretending to be a man was a bad deed, she admitted. She had taken steps that women were not permitted to take. Terrible memories of the storms of war would always be with her, yet she had done it for the best reasons: liberty and independence. The new United States government granted small monthly payments to those who had served in the war. Deborah Sampson Gannett was granted payments for her faithful service as a soldier of the Revolution. That's phenomenal. So let's think about the selection. What is the unfortunate thing that happened to Deborah? Her father left home, sailed away on a ship, never came back. Her mother was too poor to take care of her, so her mother gave her to a family. What things make it possible for Deborah to pretend to be Robert Shirtleaf? Well, she looked young. She didn't really look like a boy, so she was able to pull it off. What did Deborah Sampson mean when she used the term storms of war? War comes and storms of war. That's when war comes, and it is a storm. It's horrific, the things that happened. Deborah was injured in the war. Says, pretend you are Mrs. Thomas. Make a numbered list of directions for Deborah Sampson to follow when she completes her jobs on the farm. Begin with 1, get up at dawn. Deborah had a lot of chores to do. So students listening to this, don't complain about the few chores that you have to do. Deborah got up at dawn. She fed the chicken. She milked the cow. She sewed. She weaved. She tended the vegetables in the garden. She cooked for the family. And the list goes on because her work was never finished at the farm. So if you like Deborah Sampson, Soldier of the Revolution, press like at the end, and I'll see you next time. That's it today at Cindy Harper Speaks. Thanks for tuning in.